Hey everyone, the Artie Dans here from Shockmania, and welcome to this video. This is a series I like to call Starter Kits. So if you would like to get into watching a particular type of horror movie, I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations on what I think might be a great start for you. In this video, we're going to look at Indonesian horror, and that means all types of Indonesian horror, not a specific type. So depending on what type of horror movies you like, you may be able to find something of your interest here in this list. So I've picked 6 movies that I think might make a good starter kit for you if you want to get into Indonesian horror. And then I'm going to give some recommendations that you can watch afterwards. Now, bear in mind, I don't necessarily think all these movies are fabulous. These are just what I would think would be a great starter kit for you. Also, what seems to be quite popular with other people's opinions about what would make a great first up film for you to watch if you're trying to get into this. So without further ado, let's get started. It's really obvious whenever you speak to someone from Indonesia or someone who really likes Indonesian movies, this is always the first movie they will recommend to you. It is an absolute must watch. It's Pengabdi Setan. That's what it's called in Indonesian, but we would know it by the title of Satan's Slaves. Now, there are 3 movies in the Satan's Slaves series. There's the 1980 original, there's the 2017 remake by Joko Anwar, and then he followed it up in 2022 with a sequel that actually continues on from the 2017 movie. These are really, really awesome Indonesian horror films. They are to do with a family whose mother is a singer, and she has kind of made this pact with a cult to have children. But this cult demands that they take one of her children in order to it's a sacrifice to them. Well, I don't want to tell you more than that because I think this is a movie that you should really sit down and watch. And of course, they explain this a lot better than I can ever do it. The movie series is well known for its fabulous effects. It has some fantastic visual effects, and also the fact that it can scare you with not too much. These are quite terrifying movies. Even if you're a hardened horror fan, I think you might find something to enjoy in this series of films. If you were to ask me which one of the 3 you should get started with, then it's definitely the 2017 Joko Anwar remake, then follow it up with his sequel from 2022, and then for some curiosity's sake, go and watch the 1980 original. It's a lot different to the 2017. It's very campy, it's got very cheap looking special effects, but the idea and the bones behind the series are there, and it's what inspired Joko Anwar to make the remake in 2017. So this is definitely on the top of everyone's lists when it comes to Indonesian horror films. Next up that you might consider, this is a bit of a controversial one, and controversial in the fact that it's not a full-on scary horror film, but it is the #1 Indonesian horror film box office wise, and that is, it's from 2022 as well, and it's called KKN in the Dancer's Village. Now, personally, I didn't quite like this film. I thought it was just a little bit too long, and not being a teenager, I didn't really relate to any of the characters in the film. But I can see if you're kind of younger or a teenager, or it's something that you just want to get started into, I can see the appeal of this film. KKN is a community service that the students do. So this is the information that I've gathered from a bunch of Indonesian friends, is that in their college years, they're required by the government to form groups of about 6, and they head off to a village, usually something that's quite a fair bit away from town, so might have very spotty internet access, and they will do a project to enhance the community that they're there. And in this particular movie, the project that they're looking at doing is creating some kind of irrigation system for the farmers that are in this town. However, there is a kind of urban myth going on in this town about a dancer who is looking for a new victim, essentially, and takes interest in some of the students. She tempts one of the boys, and she also possesses one of the girls. The movie is based on a story, and the story is something that was very popular on Indonesian social media, and thus it spawned a bit of a cult following online and then turned into this film. Now, there are 2 different versions of this movie that you can find. There is the original director's, or the original cinematic version, which is over 2 hours, about 2 hours, 10 minutes. And then for some reason, there is a director's cut, which is almost close to 3 hours. And I cannot for the life of me figure how you would possibly want to add another 40 minutes of footage to this movie to make it enjoyable. But there are the two versions available if you want to watch it. It's also left itself open for a sequel, which apparently is in the makes as well. So I'm recommending this film in the starter kit only for the fact that it is the #1 box office wise movie in Indonesia. It is the most popular movie amongst the younger audience, and by that alone, it's probably something that you might want to check out. Now, if you're into slashers is not very big in Asia at all, and certainly not very big in Indonesian horror cinema. However, they did take on the slasher genre with The Doll. Now, The Doll is a series of films. There are 4 in the series, Doll 1, 2, and 3, and then a spin-off featuring a female doll. With this series, you can't do wrong watching any of them to start off with. The footage that you're seeing on the screen now is specifically from The Doll 3, which is the later of the movies. Again, released in 2022. 2022 was quite a good year for Indonesian horror, by the way. Pretty much anything from that year, you're not going to go too wrong if you want to sit and watch it. And The Doll is just your standard average slasher film, but added with a bit of comedy and a bit of an Indonesian twist to it. Specifically, the footage that we're looking at here for Doll 3, it's very Chucky inspired. You've got a spirit of a boy reborn in a doll that goes on a bit of a slightly murderous rampage, trying to protect his sister. You can't go wrong with this particular film if you're looking for a slasher, if you're looking for a fun movie, and if you're looking for that kind of soft entry point Indonesian horror where you're thinking, yeah, I want to watch a foreign movie, but I don't want to watch something that's highly religious or highly spiritual or has got stuff that I don't understand. I think everyone understands a slasher, everyone understands a murderous doll, and that's what makes this part of the Indonesian starter kit. Now, I have to be honest about this one. I am not a fan of these two films, but they have their supporters, and they're very vocal about it. And I'm probably going to get some hate about not liking the May the Devil Take You series. Now, this one is directed by, and I'm going to stuff up his name, Timo Tayanto. Sorry, Timo. I really got to learn how to say your name. And when you look at the films, they do look very well done. They've got the chills, they've got the scares, and between him and Joko Anwar, they certainly know how to craft a really good horror film. There's just something about this series that hasn't appealed to me, and I think it's Chelsea Islan. I'm not a great fan of her, so thus I have difficulty watching movies with her in them, but your mileage may vary, and I hope it does. This comes highly recommended from a lot of people who are into Asian horror films. So I would check out May the Devil Take You, and then definitely go check out the sequel, May the Devil Take You Too. Now, let's say you're one of those people who likes found footage movies. Well, Indonesia's got something for you as well. There's a series called Keramat, which, again, well, there's a sequel made in 2022. Like I said, 2022 is a fabulous year for Indonesian horror films. This one is a very interesting type of found footage movie because this follows a bunch of filmmakers who try to, they're making a film, and so they go and investigate this kind of spiritual thing that happens. In part 2, which is the one that I've seen, they take 2 boys and 3 girls go to this little village where they try to investigate the origins of a dance. And the dance is what one of the girls wants to use as as her main college project to try and get a top grade. So they head to this village to try and recover this lost dance. But at the same time, they also want to investigate the boys who have this YouTube channel, want to investigate the story of a ghost that resides in a building nearby. And as you can imagine, all hell breaks loose. This is, again, like all found footage movies, it suffers from the whole idea that people are just filming things that they probably don't need to film, and that it's done just for the purpose of filling in gaps in the movie. A lot of unnatural camera placements and a lot of scenes where you just think, why would you be filming that? But that's what happens in this film. Interesting from this one, there's only 2 different cameras that are used, and they're the cameras from the boys who are actually filming the project. Actually, I tell a lie. I think there's some iPhone footage thrown in there as well to kind of pad out what some of the girls are doing when they're trying to learn their dances, especially when it's just the girls alone. In regards to Asian found footage movies, Look, there's not too many really good Asian found footage movies. In fact, there's not very many good found footage movies at all. You can think of Incantation from Taiwan. You can think of Gonjam from Korea. And everyone swears by Noroyo from Japan. Don't know if you would add Keramat to that list of fabulous found footage films, but certainly if you're getting into Indonesian horror and you think, well, I like the found footage genre, then give this one a stab. It's probably your most slickest and most easy to find of all the films. Now, this is a movie a lot of other people swear by other than Satan Slaves, and I think it's most likely to do with the fact it's from Joko Anwar, who again is just a master in being able to craft great horror films. In this one, it's called Impetigore. That's the English title, and I'm going to pop up all the Indonesian titles for all the movies on the screen as well, just in case you can't find it under the English title. Impetigore tells the tale of a woman, Tara Basro, who again is in Satan's Slave, so her and Yoko work well together. She inherits a little house in a village after she finds out her parents have passed away. And she heads to this village and with her friend and notices that there are no children in this village at all. And there have been no children born in the village for a very long time. While she's there, a woman gives birth, but the baby dies. And they uncover that there is some kind of spirit or charm or spell that's placed on the village. And it's all to do with the leader of the village and a bit of history behind something that's happened in that village as well. And she seems to be the key to being able to stop this curse from continuing. Impetigore's not a bad film. In fact, Impetigore's a really good film for the first 2/3 of it. The final third of it is where I kind of lost my way with the film because it started to get just slightly complex. And this is an actual problem with Joko Anwar. It tends to get slightly complex in the way that he explains how these films end. And then it left itself open for a sequel, which probably didn't need to do. But it is a really good film to get started in your Indonesian starter kit. And like I said, it's another film other than Satan's Slaves that everyone will recommend that you have to watch. So I'm going to tell you, I think you should watch it as well. Now, it's almost impossible to make a starter kit list of movies with only a handful of titles that I've given you. I've given you 6 titles, a couple of them a series of movies, but given you 6 titles to get started with. But there are more. There are a hell of a lot more, and a lot of people that you talk to will probably mention some of the titles that I'm about to say now. So once you've done with those 6, or had enough of those 6, try and see some of the movies on this list. From 2022, like I said, a great year, Ivanna tended to be quite a popular film amongst netizens. It was one of the top 5 highest grossing horror movies in Asia for 2022, so it had a great return. Not a film I particularly enjoyed, but it had its moments. Now, if you start to get into Indonesian horror films, something you're going to come across is a Pocong, which is something to do with the Muslim faith. It's a shroud ghost, essentially. Now, there are a lot of movies about Pocongs. Comedies, serious movies, thrillers, band movies. So finding a really good movie about Pocongs is going to be a little difficult, but give them a shot. If you see something about a Pocong, it's most likely going to be a very silly and low budget film, but at least it gives you an idea about the spirit and the ghost and what its significance is in Indonesian culture. Now, it's very hard to talk about Indonesian films without talking about Rapi Films. Rapi Films is a studio that has been going on for decades in Indonesia, and they have made some of the greatest films there, including the Satan's Slave series. So essentially, every time you see a movie that has the word Rapi Films at the start of it, I'd probably sit and pay attention to it and have a crack. Something that I really loved from the Mo brothers was Macabre. This one stars a very young Julie Estelle and is about a family of cannibals. Well worth it, but very gory. This is a film from 2022. This is called Inang. It's a bit more of a serious horror film. This is about a woman who's pregnant, who is invited to live with a couple in the countryside to raise her child. They want to adopt her child after she gives birth. But she notices while she's there that the couple are a bit strange and there's something going on. Definitely worth watching if you're after a very serious Indonesian horror film. And on the flip side, if you're after something a bit funny, you can check out Mumun. This is a comedy horror starring a woman who plays a dual role in the film about a character called Mumun. She gets killed, comes back to life, and starts scaring the person and people responsible for her death. Quite a funny film if you can find it. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to mention Queen of Black Magic. This is another popular Indonesian horror series. This is another movie series that started off its life in the 80s and then was remade in 2019 by the other Mo brother, Kimo Stamboil, who also did Ivanna. This one is also very highly recommended, so give it a chance if you can find it. Well, that's my list of movies that you can get started with if you want to get into Indonesian horror films. What did you think of the list? Have you seen any of them? Are there any that you want to see? Or are there any films that you think I missed that you'd like to recommend to people watching this video? I'm the Artie Dance from Shockmania. Keep an eye out for another recommendation movie starter video. Otherwise, please press like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.